This is Cara with Cherokee 411, or as also known as Cherokee 411 with Cara. And we're here today with Tori Holland from the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians. Tori, let's just dig right in because these are some topics that need to be heard. So Tori, first tell us about yourself. I know you from the community. I'm excited you said yes about being on today. Tell us about your formal roles and titles, and tell us a little bit about yourself as a Cherokee woman too, before we dig into Cherokee or Keetoowah history.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm honored. My name is Tori Holland. I was born and raised in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. My dad worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs as a law enforcement officer my whole life up until I graduated from college. So Indian law was always kind of part of my family because my dad would have to go out to reservations and, I was just familiar with what that looked like. My grandma also was very involved in tribal affiliation things. She worked for the Bureau of Indian Education. She was a principal at Sequoia High School, and she taught at Sequoia High School. So this was something I always just kind of grew up in. My mom's family, my great grandma was full blood Cherokee, and her dad was one of the former district chiefs, I think is how they refer to them as, of the United Keetoowah Band. So this was all something I kind of grew up in. In college, I ran for Miss Keetoowah. Honestly, it was for scholarship purposes, and I won. And I was like, okay, great, I got a scholarship. What I didn't realize is how many doors that would open. So I ended up becoming really good friends with the assistant chief, Charles Locust, and his wife, Brenda Locust. And I wanted to be a party planner. So it just so happened Brenda was over all of the special projects. So I did my internship planning our celebration. Like that was my internship in college. So that then turned into a full-time job, and I wanted to be a party planner. So they put me in on the economic development side, and we had all these glorious plans of like opening a casino and a resort, and I was going to plan concerts and it was going to be great. And then we got our casino shut down. So I was looking at losing my job along with over half of our employees. And it was really sad because we were very much a dysfunctional family, I like to say. Every month we had potluck dinners together, we hung out outside of work, and it was really sad to see that family unit essentially be broken up. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do?
Was this Tori?
Huh?
What year was this, Tori? Because there's so many Cherokees that don't know even our contemporary history, like the last 10, 20 years.
So I think it was 20. So I graduated college in 2012. And then in 2013 is when everything kind of hit the fan.
Okay, so this was when in Cherokee Nation time period, this was Chief Baker's administration then. Okay.
Yes. So our casino was getting shut down due to the actions of Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. They filed an injunction to keep our lands from getting in trust. And so we had to shut down our casino, which was primarily our revenue source. So I kind of looked around and I was like, well, what do I do now? And I very Elle Woods was like, well, let's go to law school. So I took the LSAT in January and I didn't do as good as I wanted. So I was like, oh, I'll just wait. And then I got in a fight with my best friend and I was like, well, I'm going to apply to law school. And then I got put on the wait list. So I went and met with OU Law because that's the only place I wanted to go. And they told me if I could get like one more point on my LSAT, I'd get in. So I took the LSAT in June, got accepted in July, and I moved in August of 2014. So that started my law school career. I did all the Indian law things. And I knew about Cherokee history and Keetoowah history because of where I grew up. But knowing that overarching like United States tribal history was really eye-opening to me because I'd never have heard the big story. So that was really fascinating. I graduated law school, worked for a couple of different places trying to figure out what I liked best, but I always knew I wanted to come back and work for my tribe. So I did end up coming back to work for my tribe. I am the tribal council attorney as well as the congressional delegate. So they're stuck with me.
Okay, I love this. So you are I want to make sure active listening. You're the attorney for the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians Tribal Council.
Yes.
And then you're also the congressional delegate to the U.S. Congress on behalf of the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians.
And I am also the prosecutor, and I am also the party planner.
This is awesome. This is true for our Indian women across all of Indian country, but especially at home in any of our Cherokee communities. I love this. Okay, very good. All right, that is excellent. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, because I hate it when folks say that they don't know who wonderful Cherokee women like yourself are. I'm like, if you have not met them, you need to meet them, make a point of meeting them, get to know them, because you have been wonderful every time I've met you out at different things. So thank you for that, Tori, for
Same
being a
to
good
you.
human being.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, so let's talk about, we want to hear the Keetoowah historical timeline. I know that could be lengthy. Do your best to try to, I know we all have those, we all have short attention spans, like the 6-second goldfish, right? That Time wrote about. So whatever you can do to briefly outline the Keetoowah history would be appreciated.
I got this down in a 5-minute elevator speech. Okay.
Love it.
So historically, all the Cherokee people were what's in the South, right? Like Tennessee, Georgia, that area. 10 years prior to the Trail of Tears, a group of Cherokee moved to what is now Arkansas. And for easy math purposes, we're going to say a third. And that third was the Western Cherokee, and also known as the Old Settlers. Okay, so you have 2/3 remaining in the South. The Trail of Tears happened. A second third was forcefully removed over with the Western Cherokee into what is now Oklahoma. So essentially, you have 1/3 of the Cherokee people who were left in the South, and that's essentially the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. In Oklahoma, you had some divisions between the mixed bloods and the full bloods, and that's literally how they were referred to as. Like, we went back to old, like 1900s articles, and that's how the division started, the mixed bloods and the full bloods. So this kind of had some tension there, but it really culminated in the Civil War. So when the Civil War happened, the more traditional full-blood Cherokees sided with the Union, and the mixed blood sided with the Confederacy. And in fact, if you go to the Keetoowah Museum, there's a flag that says Friends of the Union, the Keetoowahs, because that's who the more traditional full-blood sided with. Behind the scenes, you have different eras of how Congress dealt with the Indians. So they went through an era of tribes are good, tribes are bad, all these sort of things. So after the Civil War, we went to an era of termination. So Congress passed various acts, essentially stripping the tribes of the rights that they had. So one of those for the Cherokee people is the Curtis Act. So the Curtis Act essentially abolished our court system. There was also the sunset provision, which closed the rolls of the Cherokee people, I believe was what that was. And then you had the Principal Chiefs Act. And the Principal Chief Act said that the United States president appointed the Cherokee chief. Okay. Well, the full bloods and the more traditional Cherokee people didn't like this. They wanted to maintain some form of government, but because of the congressional acts, they couldn't. So we had some split up bands of more full-blood Indians. We had the Nighthawk Keetoowahs. We had the Keetoowah Society, which actually incorporated as a business, if you will, so they could maintain some sort of communal organization. We had like 7 different groups of Keetoowah people. And I say that because Keetoowah is what we historically called ourselves, Ani Gadua. Cherokee is a Choctaw word, and the Choctaws actually got to name a bunch of the tribes because they did primarily the trading with the Europeans. So Congress changed their mind again, and they were like, oh, tribes are a good thing. So they passed the Indian Reorganization Act, but that didn't apply to Oklahoma. So then they passed the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act. And so those groups of more traditional full-blood Cherokee people formed what is now called the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma. We could have called ourselves anything, but that is what they chose. So we were federally recognized under the OIWA. So we had all of those rights of sovereignty reestablished in our tribal court, or in our tribe.
Okay, very good. I was like taking notes. So I got caught up in like trying to make sure I was keeping up with you. That was impressive, Tori.
Might
So
be more than 5 minutes, but I tried.
yes, so I have a couple of questions. I will always consider myself a student of our Cherokee history and language and culture. I'm not an attorney. I have to remind people that. No, I can't answer your attorney questions. I'm an engineer. So I want to make sure I heard you correctly. So, like, I'm descended from the last chief of the old settlers. And so that union would have happened at the time when everybody came over. Within 2 years, there was an election and John Ross won on the Cherokee Nation side. Um, so you're saying that there was a split after that or during that time between full bloods and mixed bloods?
There was kind of both. So remember you had the treaty party who signed the Treaty of New Echota, and
Yes.
they were killed because they violated Cherokee law. So you had that group of people, and then you had the John Ross group, and then there was another group of people, a group of Cherokee people too. So it all kind of like meshed together. As far as the United States was concerned, we were all the Cherokee Nation. They didn't care if you were mixed blood. They didn't care if you were full blood. They didn't care. You're just the Cherokee Nation.
Okay.
But within that group, it's kind of like how in the United States we have different political parties. That's kind of how it was for the Cherokee people.
Okay. And then there was another thing that caught my attention that I was trying to make sure I heard correctly, and I'm trying to remember what it was now after I did all the. Okay, so I guess at what point then are the Keetoowahs the Keetoowahs? Maybe that's what I missed. Like,
Okay.
I I want to make sure because if I'm lost, I know there's going to be a lot of others and on any bit of that,
Yeah,
and I want
no.
to try to give them a chance to we flesh it out. And we'll offer when this gets to have questions posted so that
Yeah.
you'll be back. I hope so.
I think that's a great question because I think a lot of times people get confused by Keetoowah and Cherokee when they are the same thing. So if you go back to history, we called ourselves Ani Gadua, which means I am Keetoowah, right? So Ani
Yes.
Gadua. And that's why we have the Gadua Mound in North Carolina, very close to Cherokee, North Carolina. So that we were always Keetoowah people. The Choctaws were primarily the ones who traded with the Europeans, and they refer to us as Jalagi or Cherokee. So that is a Choctaw word. But that is the word that the Europeans used to describe us because they traded with the Choctaws and that's what they called us. So whenever we came over to what is now Oklahoma, we're still the Cherokee Nation. But whenever Congress passed the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act and we had the authority to name ourselves, we decided to name ourselves Keetoowah because that's what we've always referred to ourselves as. Now, we could have called ourselves the Cherokee Nation. We could have called ourselves the United Cherokee Indian Tribe, like whatever name, we could have called ourselves that. But collectively, these groups of Cherokee people wanted to call themselves Keetoowah because that's what we refer to ourselves as. And we wanted to
Okay,
name.
and what year is this then?
I have to look at the specific year, but it was before the OIWA came into effect. Actually, if you look at the M opinion, they do a really good job of summarizing that name and how that happened. Because we went from the Keetoowah Society Incorporated, which was essentially a business, to a governing body that is recognized by the United States. And it was our corporate charter and constitution was passed in 1950 by Congress. So that sealed the deal.
But in the M opinion, which is the Department of Interior letter that was just issued in January, right?
Yes.
So it has a summary of the timeline, and then let's just dive into that. So tell me about the M opinion, the letter. What does that mean to regular Joe or Jane Cherokee out here inside the jurisdictional boundaries? What does that mean?
So the M opinion was something that the United States Solicitor's Office did. And both the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma and the United Keetoowah Band submitted documentation in November of 2022 to answer the question, who has jurisdiction over the reservation? So the solicitor went through thousands, literally thousands of documents that the UKB provided, thousands of documents that the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma provided, and then they did their own independent historical analysis. And
Okay.
so M opinion breaks down the history of the Cherokee people. It's 56 pages. It has 410 footnotes, and they did a deep dive into the Cherokee people and how we got to where we are. And essentially what the M opinion said is that the UKB can get lands in trust for gaming in the Cherokee Reservation because it is their reservation. So the Cherokee Reservation is the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma Reservation and is the reservation of the United Keetoowah Band. So that affects our everyday citizens and members because this is an opportunity for the tribes to work together. We have concurrent jurisdiction over the reservation, and with that comes an endless possibility of working together to better the lives of our community members.
Okay, Tori, let's get into something then. So there was the case 3 months ago where a United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians, you have Light Horse, right? Not Marshals.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so Light Horse, uh, actually, it was one of your females, so Light Horse women, had pulled over, and I think I know her, pulled over someone that was suspected of a DUI in Tahlequah. And then there was just erupted into a ruckus after that, even though that officer, I understand, did not interact with the person other than to pull them over and call other law enforcement to the scene to address the alleged DUI perpetrator, if I recall correctly. So then, since then, they've had pushback. They've pushed back on your light horsemen, your law enforcement, and the tribe. So, what does this letter mean to that situation? Will light horsemen be able to pull me as a Cherokee Nation citizen over for traffic tickets or DUI or criminal activity, any criminal activity, or how's that going to work?
So first of all, I want to back up and talk about that DUI case.
Yes.
So there was a call that went out, and our officers have access to the radio. So there was a call that went out. This person was evading law enforcement. So they initiated a stop. Right behind them was state officers. So they initiated the stop. The state officer was there. We pushed the case through the state court system because, like I said, the state officer was there. The state officer is the one that wrote the ticket. And the UKB was never notified about what was going on. We did not find out that this case had even happened really until Chief Hoskins' chief chat came out, and I had to Google it because I did not know what he was referring to. So once I found the case, it's David Force, or State of Oklahoma against David Force, and it's in Cherokee County. So the defendant filed a motion to suppress evidence based off the UKB officer's jurisdiction or lack thereof. In the order, for the court order, it just says motion to suppress granted, objection by the state. It does not go into why the evidence was suppressed. So we're only speculating it's because of what was said in the motion, but that's never in the court order. The court never found that we didn't have jurisdiction, and if it did, it didn't put it in writing. And third of all, the case at that point was only having the evidence suppressed by the state officer. After that, then he filed a motion to dismiss, and that was granted. But the UKB was never consulted on any of that. I was never asked to give my legal opinion. Our officers weren't notified of what's going on. So it's really disappointing because, one, had we been able to help the district attorney's office, it could have had a very different solution. Under the United States v. Coley case, even without a cross-deputation agreement, tribal officers can detain. So I would have argued United States v. Cooley, and along with several other legal arguments, but we weren't invited to do so. So that was really disappointing that we were not consulted and we did not have a say-so in how this case shook out, and we had to hear about it on the media. So that was disappointing. As to whether or not the UKB has jurisdiction over the reservation, absolutely. Indian federal law is a tribe has jurisdiction over Indians in Indian country. And there's a case called Duro v. Reyna, and you had a non-member Indian, so someone of another tribe, in another tribe's Indian country. And the United States Supreme Court said, no, 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 you can't prosecute them. They're not your tribal member. Well, Congress didn't like that. And so Congress passed the Duro Fix. And so the Duro Fix is incorporated in the Indian Civil Rights Act. And it says clearly that tribes have jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction, over any Indian in Indian country. So by being Native American, we have criminal jurisdiction over all Indians in the reservation, concurrent with that of Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma.
No, I think people just do not understand post McGirt these issues, even with one tribe involved, let alone the complexity of the other. That doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's good. It is governance, and it's just complex, and they're not wrapping their heads around it. And it's frustrating to me when I watch government officials on all sides, to your point, not communicating, not talking to each other, and not trying to find as much common ground for all of us. Because I don't know if your tribal citizens are talking to you about issues, but our tribal citizens talk to me about issues, and they are frustrated with lack of law enforcement, lack of consistency in how the laws are applied, and then lack of transparency on that legal process from beginning to end. We don't know. I mean, as an employer in Cherokee side, the Cherokee Nation and UKB, if I go run an MVR and it's a tribal citizen, I don't know if they've had a DUI or not when I'm putting them on my insurance.
Yep.
I think that's a problem over time.
Well, and that's why it's so important to have cooperation agreements. When I was the prosecutor at Comanche Nation had a tribal court, and then they shared lands with the Kiowa and the Apache, and they did not have their own tribal court system. So those went to CFR court. And we would have a case happen that was on shared land. And literally all I did was text the CFR prosecutor, hey, this is the case. You want to take it or you want me to? And that's how we figured it out. It's not hard. It just takes cooperation. And when I first got in, working for the tribe in this capacity, I sat down with Sarah Hill, who was Attorney General of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma at the time, and I said, listen, your court systems are overran. We have a functioning law enforcement. We have a functioning court. We can work on this. We can work these things out together. And her response was, well, that's too complicated. And I was like, no, it isn't. Let's draw a chart. CNO on CNO, CNO court. UKB on UKB, UKB court. Like, we can make things work. It just takes coming to the table and cooperating to make that happen.
I know a lot of people that are going to be very excited just to hear this conversation, and that like there is a path forward if folks choose to do that. So
Absolutely. And I mean, for me, it's very personal. My kids don't meet the blood quantum to be United Keetoowah Band. I don't want the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma to cease to exist. That's not my goal. That's not my intent. My goal is to work together so that my kids, my grandkids, and everyone else's kids can have cooperation and live in the 14 counties and have stability and have resources. We should be the most affluent 14 counties in Oklahoma with 2 tribes who can take care of their members and citizens.
oh my gosh, Tori, amen. You could not have said that better. Like that is like I have out preaching that with my scholarship workshop and the other stuff I do. I just don't understand how we've gotten here. But
And it's really
okay,
frustrating.
it is. It is. So I hope you'll be open to coming back. We need to have more conversations. We need to have this kind of information out into the public. I know I'm going to be inviting elected officials from all sides. I don't know when we're going to get to the Eastern Band. There's so much going on in the Cherokee Nation and United Keetoowah Band, but I need to get the Eastern Band in on the Lumbee issue, but that's like its whole topic by itself. So, okay, I know we need to wrap it up because our listeners only have so much attention span. God love us all. But I want to have you back. It is this easy for us to sit down and have a conversation and get it recorded and share with people. And I'm sure that what you've shared will start a whole other conversation. So look at our feeds and look for comments once we get this published, and we'll make sure and get this back out to you. Tori, one last thing. Is there anything else you want to share and highlight today before we end for our listeners on this episode?
I just want to stress that it's so important for us to come together. And we all have a shared goal of making the 14 counties the best that it can be, and it's possible. So I look forward to working with the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma.
I love this. Wado Ganali, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. To all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us today, and look for more from the United Keetoowah Band of Cherokee Indians, as well as our own Cherokee Nation at some point. And we'll be signing off. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Join the conversation. Discover stories and insights that matter to you. Subscribe to Cherokee 411 with Cara and stay connected with independent media, real, relevant, and unfiltered.